In yesterday's episode, we retrieved the ancient tome called the Krivbekne from the ritual site at Point Lookout. Instead of giving it back to its owner, Obadiah Blackhall, we have been tasked by a missionary named Marcella to destroy the evil book by pressing it against an obelisk that she says is buried beneath a pre-war office building in the Capital Wasteland called the Dunwich Building. And so we boarded the Duchess Gambit, arriving 30 days later back at the Capital Wasteland. With the Krivbekne in tow, we head to the southwest corner of the map in search of the Dunwich Building. This is a dangerous part of the map, and along the way we have fought Deathclaws, Rad Scorpions, Sentry Bots, and Yaogwai. At long last, we see a ruined office building standing alone on top of a rocky ledge overlooking a wooded valley. As we arrive on its northern side, we learn that this is the Dunwich Building. We also learn that the local fauna are pretty sneaky. We stand in a parking lot that's partially flooded with irradiated water. This parking lot is a tad perplexing because there is no road in or out of it. We only see a few cars parked outside. When we're ready, we can enter the Dunwich Building by opening the surprisingly small front door. We appear in a darkened hallway, and immediately we see signs of violence. Lying on the ground before us is a skeleton clutching 2 ammunition boxes, and we see trails of blood going down the hallway. To the left is an employee break room, and on a table in this break room is a stack of holotape journals, 5 to be precise. These journals belonged to a man named Jamie. We can listen to them one by one.
Why the hell would he come all the way out here? Dad's been a little nuts for some time now, but not like this. Leaving me in that crappy old hospital without waking me, without a goddamn flashlight. I made enough selling the meds we scrounged to have kept us both fed at the colony for weeks. Now I'm almost out of rations, my shoes are pretty much destroyed, and I'm still chasing the old coot. By my last reckoning, he was headed south. Maybe I shouldn't have waited so damn long to start tracking him. Trail's gone cold. Gonna wander with these guys a while. They say they wander the area. Maybe somebody's seen Dad. These guys aren't who I thought they were. Jesus, they killed that family for a sack of rotten vegetables. Getting out of here next chance I can without catching a bullet. Hit a caravan today. Trev didn't see the kid and got popped. I took care of Tawny right then and put one in Thor before he saw her fall. That earned me some grub from the traders. Even better, they saw Dad. He was in pretty rough shape and still has the goddamn book. Trader says it gave him the creeps. Me too. But it's good to know he's still alive, still headed south. He must have been trying to trap food here. I recognize his snares. I can make out a building on the horizon. That must be where he headed. If not, at least I get a roof tonight.
So a man named Jamie is in search of his missing father. Sound familiar? We, like Jamie, have found ourselves here. We'll keep our eyes out for any other sign of Jamie while we explore Dunwich, but there was one thing he mentioned that caught my attention. He said his father was still carrying the book. Could his father, at one time, have been a previous owner of Krivbekne? We learned in yesterday's video that the Blackhall family had been missing their Krivbekne for generations. I suppose it could have been in anyone's hands and gone anywhere during that time. After looting a stack of stim packs from an Itotronic and Nuka-Cola from the 2 Nuka-Cola machines, we can continue down the hallway. We pass by even more skeletons, and we see 2 ways forward, through a door to the east or through a door to the west. We'll start by going west, after heading to the end of this hallway to verify that it's truly blocked off with rubble. Opening the door, we arrive in an office room filled with more rubble and more bodies. We see a second floor above, but no obvious way up there right now. Heading to the northern side of this room, we turn a corner to see some feral ghouls to the west. Once dealt with, we can loot the containers here. As we head out, we see a couple of skeletons tangled in a shelf. We can then turn south, where we see the room open up to the west through two big broken walls. Here we can turn off her radio, and lying on a table next to the radio is Jamie's personal journal, entry number 6.
Don't like the look of this place. Don't like the smell. Gives me the creeps. Don't want to risk a shot at the crows till I know what's in there. Sneaking in tonight.
So sounds like Jamie was going to shoot some crows for food, but wisely thought better of it, not wanting to awaken anything that might be in this building. Let's just hope he didn't get lost in here. But this is a dead end, which means we need to turn around and head east. Heading through the eastern door, we find a feral ghoul on the stairs. Turning around, we see blood on the ground, and we catch the attention of ghouls upstairs. Rounding this corner, we find a closet underneath the stairs, where we find a skeleton draped over a table, clutching an assault rifle. In the back of this room, we find quite a stash, a Nuka-Cola Quantum on a middle shelf, and 2 mine boxes on the shelf. There's an easy-locked ammunition box on the ground next to the shelf, and behind the table, we find some 5.56mm rounds. Interesting that we find a skeleton here barricading himself. Unlike the traders at LOB Enterprises, we don't find evidence that the feds attacked this place, so what was he hiding from? After looting the grenade box behind the table, we can creep out of the supply closet and round the corner to the stairs. He found us. Our path continues up the stairs. At the top, we see a small bathroom to the left, but there's nothing in here. Creeping back out and going to the main hallway, we see that it ends to the north at a door and a big pile of rubble, splits to the east, forming another long door-lined hallway, and continues to the south, where it wraps around to the east. Where to go, where to go? Well, let's start by going south. We see a bunch of windows facing south, and then the hallway turns east. We follow it until... What was that? That must have been a feral ghoul, right? Right? Creeping inside. Sure enough, we find a feral ghoul. He sees us but rushes back into the hallway. But this feral ghoul was too far away from the door to have opened it. How did this door open? Heading to the end of this hallway, we can loot another Nuka-Cola machine and then head through the northern door back into this room. This large rectangular room is formed by 2 rooms with a crumbled dividing wall. We can loot the room of all of its containers, but we don't find anything that can explain that door. No terminals, no tripwires, no switches. We're beginning to run out of possibilities. There are 2 doors to the north. Opening the northwesternmost one brings us back to that long door-lined hallway we saw just as we left the bathroom. On the other side of this hallway are 2 doors leading to another room, as far as we can tell looking through the broken glass. Walking down the hallway to the east, we can open the door behind us. Yeah, sure enough, that leads back to the room where we left. And being ever so careful, we can open the door to the north. Here we find a feral ghoul. And then his friend comes looking for us. Alright, I'm reasonably satisfied that I've killed all the ghouls here. The large room we enter is an absolute wreck, but we don't see any other enemies, so we can feel safe to turn on our light. Next to a skeleton on the ground is a rigged terminal on a desk. If our explosive skill is high enough, we can activate the rear panel to attempt to defuse this terminal. What is now a large room was at one time many small offices, but now their walls have all crumbled. We can loot the desks here, and then heading into the northern room, we see an open door going into the hallway. Yeah, sure enough, this was that hallway by the bathroom where we came up the stairs. All right, got my bearings, I know where I am. Heading back into the room, we can turn off our light because we see a big hole in the ground. Looks like there's a floor beneath. We haven't seen a stairway leading down there yet, so I don't think I've missed anything. Creeping over to the north, we see another hole in the wall leading to another office space with a single terminal on a desk. But as we enter, we see that it's another rigged terminal. We can disarm it by activating the rear panel. There is a door to the west here, but I hear the sounds of ghouls. Looks like this ghoul doesn't want to open the door, though. Sure enough, we see him slip by around the corner. I pulled out my Gauss rifle to try and get the jump on this guy. Ow, for the love of Pete! And here I thought I was being all super sneaky. Turning around south, the hallway rounds a corner to end at a small hallway to the west. This hallway appears to go nowhere. It ends at a bookshelf. After what we found at Obadiah's house in yesterday's episode, part of me thought this might be a trap door or something, but I don't find any way to activate anything, so it's just a dead end. Turning around and passing the ghoul we just killed, the hallway turns to the east. Here we see a door to the south, leading to another office room, but I think this one may connect to the other door in the hallway. Sure enough, going down the hallway and opening the southern door, yeah, it's another door to the room we just found. And this room connects to the large room where we killed those two ghouls earlier. And it's here where we finally find the stairway leading to the bottom level. Turning off our light and pulling out our Gauss rifle, we can open the door to the bottom level. Aside from the dust and smoke, we don't see any enemies, but there's a huge pile of rubble in the middle of the floor. We see desks, chairs, and skeletons that have dropped from the floor above. Our only way forward is to open a door to the northwest, and when we do, holy cow, look at all of that blood spatter. Blood on the ground, blood on every wall, blood on the ceiling, bloody handprints too. What on earth happened here? We see a human torso on the ground, a surgical tray on a table, and the next holotape, Jamie's entry, number 7.
The raiders told spook stories about zombies in the ruins. Never saw anything like that where I come from. But Lord help me, they're real. Not quite what Thor said, but close. These things look... I think they really used to be people.
Looks like Jamie has encountered what we have, but he didn't leave. His trail goes deep into this building. Did he ever find his father? To continue, we open a door to the west to the forsaken Dunwich ruins. We find ourselves at the bottom of a stair. Climbing up slowly, we can turn west to find a long, rubble-filled hallway with more blood on the ground. And as we pass through the door... What? Ah! Another ghoul charges us from around the corner. Was that a hallucination or a flashback? For a brief moment, we saw the Dunwich building as it once was. We even saw one of its employees, and we instantly know where these ghouls came from. We see another one of these employees turned glowing ones on the second floor. But our Gauss rifle didn't finish him off. Not yet. Not yet. There we go. But he's not the last one. We have attracted the attention of all of the ghouls on the second floor. But instead of being easy pickings, we can use the terrain to our advantage. And if we time things just right... Phew, those reavers are tough. Most of the desks from the second floor have piled up on top of each other in the middle of the first. And close to the middle of the room, against a wall, is Jamie's personal journal, entry number 8, right next to a terminal.
God help me. I found Dad today. I didn't think it was him, but... the face. The zombies didn't touch him. I think he was becoming like them. Didn't know it was him until I found that old book near him. No more killing. I just need to go. Can't forget the book. All I have left of him. It's warm against the stone. I'll just rest a while.
Okay. He said it was warm against the stone. Stone, what stone? We don't see a stone here. Maybe it's deeper on in. He found his father, but his father was turning into a feral ghoul. It's not mentioned in the game, but in the director's notes of the script for this holotape, we learned that it was Jamie himself who killed his own father, not realizing that the ghoul he was attacking was his father until it was too late. But he retrieved the book. As of this holotape, it was in his possession. But we clearly have the book now, unless he's talking about some other book. But if he is indeed talking about the Krivbekna, how did he lose the book? How did it get into the hands of the swamp people? The terminal is locked with an easy lock. After hacking it, we find a store of pre-war information about the Dunwich building. We learned that the name of the company was Dunwich Borers LLC. On this terminal, they had installed something called auto-dictation software. Welcome, Herman Granger, available records in memory. The first note is about the auto-dictation software. Software version is version 223. Configured to user voice H. Granger. Onomatopoeia dictation is off. Phonetic spelling parser is off, but autocorrect is on. Okay, looks like Granger had some sort of dictation software installed so that he didn't have to type. Why work hard when you can work smart, right? Right. Next, we find a series of entries spanning 60 years. The first is on October 18th, 2077. Memo to sales staff. In recognition of an exemplary quarter, Mr. Statham has authorized me to release sales staff early for the holidays. It was no easy task to release an acoustic borer to a market used to conventional bit bore drilling systems, but thanks to your hard work and acoustic bore drills are setting a new standard in the excavation industry. Thanks to your many private sales and procurement of government contracts, we'll all be in the black for the foreseeable future. Happy holidays from Mr. Statham and Dunwich Borers. Now get on home to your families. What a healthy work culture. The next two entries arrive on October 23rd, 2077. We instantly recognize that date. That was the day the bombs dropped. Boom. Notice to user. PageSoft LLC recommends against sustained recordings in a low-frequency environment. Continued use in this manner voids all hardware warranties. Auto-dictator version 223, powering off automatically. The next one, on the same day. And we get the same automated message. We know that the bombs hit Washington, D.C. at 9:47 a.m. on this day. It's interesting, though, that we find two auto-dictation entries here, and they both sound a little different. The first one sounds like it picked up one of the nuclear detonations. It practically says kaboom. The second one, however, doesn't really sound like an explosion. It kind of sounds like a machine. Could they both have been from bombs that dropped at different times? Or could the second one be from some sort of sound that started after the bombs dropped? But what we do know is that after this point, there was silence in the Dunwich building for 57 years until March 27th, 2134. On that day, this computer picked up a voice. What the hell was that? No, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Where was it? Where? There. Safe and sound. God, they bled so much, but I kept it clean. Blast. More. Gotta move. Gotta keep it safe. I think this must be a recording of the very moment the Krivbekna was spirited away from the Dunwich building. We know from Jamie's latest holotape that he was the last to have it, and that he was in this building. I believe this is the transcript of the moment that Jamie was looking for the Krivbekna after killing his ghoul father. But he clearly no longer has it, which means either he took it out himself, or someone took it from him. But the date on this entry was 2134, 143 years before the events of Fallout 3. Could it be that Jamie came to this building and recorded his holotapes 143 years ago? The next one was recorded exactly 1 month later, in April of 2134. My skin, barely any left. One of them now, but they know I still have it. Stay back. Back, you. That's close enough. You, and you too, over there. Yes. One of us. Ug-qualtoth is returned. Oh no. I think this is a recording of Jamie turning into a feral ghoul. And if that's the case, then he lost the wherewithal he needed to retrieve the Krivbekna from this building, which means that someone else must have come here to remove it, and that we'll likely still find Jamie deeper on. But who is ug-qualtoth? The next entry appears only a few days later, on May 1st, 2134. Ug-qualtoth. I came. Back this time, deep temple. Screaming, twisting. No light, no flesh. Deep temple born, deep temple died. Ug-qualtoth again. Returned. Retribution. Notice to user. Internal memory capacity reached. PageSoft LLC recommends PageMem LLC for all your data storage needs. Please contact your administrator for details. This terminal kept recording for almost 60 years, but in the year 2134, the arrival of Jamie and his father and their adventure with the Krivbekna filled up all available storage on this terminal. We therefore have no record of what has been spoken in this place over the past 143 years. After exploring this bottom floor, we could leave out of an eastern doorway, or we can go up a rubble ramp. We'll start by taking the rubble ramp to the second floor. At the top, we find an average locked door to the north. On the other side... Did that pot just move? And the fan too? Why? Why did the fan move? Oh man, doors opening and furniture flying around a room. What on earth can explain this? Stepping inside, we find a skeleton on the ground next to a chair, and on the ground near to the body is a Chinese assault rifle next to a first aid kit and 3 ammunition boxes. The terminal is locked with a very easy lock. Inside, we only find one entry, data entry. Here I am, trapped in a room by myself, typing on a terminal, trying to keep myself busy. Hell, trying to keep myself sane. I don't know what it is about this place, but I want to get out of here. Yeah, get out of here. I can't even bring myself to open that damn door again. I hear those things wandering around outside, sniffing, screaming, and doing whatever they do. When I first got here, I thought the place was abandoned and went around looking for anything to scavenge. 5 minutes later, I'm in this room scared half out of my mind. Things started chasing me. I fired a few shots, missed, and ran through the darkness. Oh, crap. Told old Billy to meet me here and bring some extra ammo and grenades. That was 3 days ago. Poor guy probably didn't make it too far. Those things have better given him a quick death. Listen to me, babbling like a damn fool. Billy's all right. I'll just stick here until those things go away and meet up with him. Ha, what a story I have for him. Well, things did not go according to plan for this man. Here he lies. And Billy must have been the skeleton with his arms around the ammunition and grenade boxes we found at the very entrance to the Dunwich building. This author was right. Billy did not get very far. Well, not wanting to linger too long in a haunted room, we can head out and meander to the southwest to finish exploring the place. This part of the second floor is treacherous. The floor is almost completely gone in some places, and in others it looks like it's about to crumble at any second. We see a number of doors to the south. Leaping from ledge to platform, we can finally get ourselves in a position to explore them. We'll start by opening the eastern door, but this leads to a hallway filled in with rubble. So turning around, we can open the door to the west. Heading south, we see that the right path is blocked, so we can turn left right into a feral ghoul. There's a small little utility room to the north. Inside we find a couple of containers and a copy of Dean's Electronics, which permanently increases our repair skill. Here we also find a first aid box. Heading out, this left path leads to a stairway that connects to that opening we saw on the first floor. So since we know that will just take us back to where we were, we can turn around and go north down the hallway to continue forward. We walk down a long hallway with the rec room we just explored to our right, whereupon we can turn left left, and then left again to enter a brand new room. And from here, we can pick off the feral ghouls lurking about on this floor and the one directly beneath it. With the ghouls dead, we can explore this room, and it is in utter ruin. The floor is so crumbled that we have to leap from little floating platform to little floating platform to avoid falling down. There's nothing to the southwest. As we hop back towards the north, a feral ghoul climbs a nearby staircase. Hopping on over from platform to the northwest, there's nothing to the northwest, but if we hop to the west, we see a door to a bathroom on the other side of a large gap. Inside, we find a skeleton on the ground and 2 doses of jet in the toilet. Jumping back across, we can leave by walking over a broken door ramp to the staircase where we killed that ghoul. We can then use this staircase to go on down to that bottom floor. At the bottom of the staircase, we find a hallway that winds this way and that. At the end of the hallway, we see 2 paths, a closed door to the south and a broken door to the north. Heading north, we find ourselves in that bottom floor of the room we just explored. We can run around and loot the ghoul bodies we sniped earlier, but there's nothing else worth mentioning in this room. So to continue forward, we head down the hallway south, where we find a door to the virulent underchambers. We arrive at yet another ruined office complex. The floor above us has collapsed into this one, and a wind comes from somewhere. We see it blowing around dust in this room. We hear the sound of feral ghouls. Using our Gauss rifle to peer down, we can look around, but we don't see any. I'm sure they'll show their faces later. In the middle of this room, we see a desk, which we can reach by walking a plank, upon which rests Jamie's personal journal entry number 9.
Sharp knife. Sharp knife to send him to Deep Temple. Flay and say my words. Abdul comes again on the feast of the weaker. Feast for the Deep Temple. Born again. Here. Al-Hazared. Yes. Yes.
Well, he's gone. After looting the containers on this top floor, we can jump down to some of the broken platforms to the floor beneath. This room, incidentally, is filled with radiation. Even in a full suit of T-51 power armor, I had to pop some Radix and Radaway. As we climb deeper into the earth, we finally start to see some of the ghouls at the very bottom of this level. There is no path leading up to these platforms, so we can snipe at these ghouls from this level without fear of retaliation. After looting a first aid kit on the wall, and once the ghouls are dead, we can hop on down to the bottom level. But we quickly learn that we hadn't killed them all. Heading through a door from this room, our scenery changes. We move from office buildings to some sort of utility tunnel. This tunnel takes us deeper into the earth. Does the Dunwich building connect to some sort of sewer? Continuing down, we find a staircase, and at the bottom of the stairs, a first aid kit on a wall next to a door that leads to another tunnel. At the end of this tunnel, we find a door that leads to a room filled with thick mist, and of course, a glowing one. We have 2 choices. We can go up a new staircase, or we can go north down a new hallway. We'll start by going north down the hallway. This hallway ends at a door that leads to a cave that leads to a catwalk, which brings us down some stairs deeper into the cave. At the very end of this path, we see an opening to the left. Peering through our scope, we see a feral ghoul, but this guy isn't dressed like one. He wears a white t-shirt. He wears long trousers. He wields a gun and appears to be giving instructions to the other feral ghouls. This must be none other than Jamie. How long has Jamie been here, conversing with the other ferals? Is he leading them? Is he organizing them? Whatever he's doing, it's clear from everything we've learned about him thus far that the kindest thing to do is to put him out of his misery. With that, we clear the ghouls in this underchamber, and approaching the corpse, we learn that yes, this was the corpse of Jamie. On his body, if we have the Lawbringer perk, we find a finger, which means that he had indeed turned evil, corrupted by something, possibly the Krivbekne. And it's then we remember that we hold the Krivbekne. If this book, this evil book, could do this to Jamie, what could it do to us? And then we see it. In the middle of this room is an obelisk. It has been carved to depict roots snaking around the stone. On the back of the stone, we see a series of 5 skulls stacked on top of each other. And near the top of the obelisk is the figure of a woman climbing out of the stone, reaching for the heavens. Near to the obelisk is an altar, which appears to have grown from the cave floor itself. And it's then, as we examine it, that we begin to hear a familiar chanting sound. The same sound we heard at the ritual site. With the Krivbekne in our inventory, we can activate the altar. This obelisk shares its origins with the Krivbekne. Just being near it makes you uneasy. We can leave the obelisk alone, or we can press the Krivbekne to the obelisk's surface. If we choose this option, we destroy the Krivbekne, get a huge dose of 500 karma, and complete the quest, The Dark Heart of Blackhall. The flame explosion we just witnessed barely scratches us, but had we left these ghouls and Jamie alive and raced to the obelisk to destroy the Krivbekne, this fiery explosion would have seriously damaged all of the ghouls, but not enough to completely annihilate them. The Fallout 3 official strategy guide tells us that this reaction cleanses the nearby vicinity of impure blood. That is, ghouls. This quest, this location, is a big love letter to H.P. Lovecraft. H.P. Lovecraft wrote a short story called The Dunwich Horror. The Dunwich Horror tells the story of a swamp-dwelling family that breeds the offspring of a cosmic entity named ug-qualtoth, an entity that terrorizes the nearby town of Dunwich. Not only does the Dunwich building take its name from this short story, but the name that Jamie chanted on his holotape, ug-qualtoth, sounds remarkably like H.P. Lovecraft's ug-qualtoth. Many of his stories mention the tome The Necronomicon, a magical grimoire written by a mad Arab named Abdul Alazred. Alazred is another name that Jamie chants in many of his holotape ramblings.
Alazred!
In fact, those background voices we hear in both the underchamber and the ritual site of Point Lookout are also chanting the name of Alazred, but also the phrase Gieth, which is something that Jamie also said in his holotape.
Gieth! Gieth!
Gieth may be a reference to a city that H.P. Lovecraft invented for his Cthulhu mythos called R'lyeh, an underwater city where Cthulhu himself lies dreaming. This first one says, Alazred Gieth. This next one also says, Alazred Gieth. This next one is much slower. I think it says Alazred. And this final one clearly and simply says Gieth. And the Krivbekne is likely inspired by the Necronomicon itself. But what does all of this mean? Well, there is no concrete explanation. All we have is speculation, and that's on purpose. Bethesda says in the Fallout 3 official game guide that it's unlikely that investigators will ever uncover the truth behind the Dunwich building or the reality of ug-qualtoth because, and I quote, all investigators into grimoire oddities are currently attempting to scrape together a day-to-day existence or are dead, end quote. It appears that the state of the post-apocalyptic wasteland is so ruined, is so backwards, that there are no scientists, no investigators left with the time to spend unraveling the mystery of ug-qualtoth, the Krivbekne, and the obelisk we find here. After looting the ammunition containers we find here in the underchamber, we can retrace our steps. We can then go up that staircase in the utility room that we bypassed earlier. At the top of the staircase, we can open a door to a small room, and lying on the floor in the middle of this room is the melee weapons bobblehead. You've found a Vault-Tec limited edition bobblehead. The inscription on the base reads, "It's important to do business up close and personal. Your melee weapon skill has been permanently increased by 10. Opening the western door brings us to our room on the top floor of the Dunwich building. From here we can drop down to appear right at the hallway, near the entrance, where we find Billy's body hugging his grenade boxes. And with that, we can open the door to leave Dunwich behind us and venture onward into the capital wasteland. This isn't the only Dunwich story in the franchise. Those who have played Fallout 4 will remember Dunwich Borers, a mine where this company was using its acoustic drill bits to dig deep into the earth. I covered the strange supernatural things that went on there in my video on the topic, which you can watch here. On one hand, the Dunwich stories are a clear reference to H.P. Lovecraft, but on the other hand, they are still part of canonical lore, and we still have to explain them. Why are feral ghouls drawn to the virulent underchambers? Why, when exposed to radiation, does an otherwise healthy human being like Jamie not only start to turn feral, but also begin to chant words he never knew before, like ug-qualtoth? Is this ug-qualtoth really a supernatural being? And what about the Kriv Bekna? I'm almost getting a one ring to rule them all vibe out of this. The obelisk and the Kriv Bekna are both dark, manufactured items of the occult. By pressing the tome to the stone, it's almost like dropping the ring into the fires of Mount Doom. What kind of power was wrapped up in the Kriv Bekna? How did it give eternal youth to Constance Blackhall and possibly restorative properties to Obadiah Blackhall? And if we found Jamie here in the Dunwich building, and we know at one time he held the Kriv Bekna, how did he lose it? Who took it from him? And who transported it all the way to Point Lookout? And what were the swamp people using it for in their ritual site? How long had they had it there? Well, here's what I think happened. For some reason that is not explained, Jamie's father got his hands on the Kriv Bekna. Perhaps he purchased it off a merchant. The Fallout 3 official strategy guide tells us that he recognized it as an old and potentially valuable artifact of pre-war America, and then he wandered the wastes trying to find a buyer. But the longer he held this book, the closer he became to it. He started to notice strange things happening around him. He started to hear odd voices, have unusual impulses, and he correctly deduced that it was all coming from the Kriv Bekna. It was then he decided that this book needed to go back to its place of origin. Perhaps he heard rumor from someone he tried to sell it to that it originally came from the Dunwich building, or perhaps ug-qualtoth himself, wanting the Kriv Bekna to become closer to him so that he can consolidate his power, spoke through the Kriv Bekna to Jamie's father to tell him where to bring it. But however he learned of its origin, he ditched Jamie at the hospital, possibly not wanting to get him involved in this, and left to dispose of the tome at the Dunwich building. As we learned, Jamie tracked his father down to the building, only to discover that he had become a ghoul. Jamie inadvertently kills his father and retrieves the book from the floor of the Dunwich building. But like it did to his father before him, the book began to speak to Jamie. Perhaps ug-qualtoth was seeking an appropriate host whom he could use to manipulate things directly above ground. After all, one of the things that Jamie said is that ug-qualtoth has returned. Ug-qualtoth has an easier time controlling weaker minds. This is why he prefers to work with feral ghouls. But in Jamie, he found someone whose mind was weak enough that he could speak to it, and over the course of a few months, he managed to turn Jamie feral enough to make him the perfect receptacle. Here in the basement of the Dunwich building, ug-qualtoth's power grew, until his presence was detected by someone who has a long history with the Dunwich family, none other than Obadiah Blackhall. Now the rest of this depends on some cut content from Point Lookout. The Dark Heart of Blackhall quest was originally to be very different. In that quest, Obadiah Blackhall was not a bad guy, and he wasn't responsible for murdering Marcella. But aside from the quest differences, there were a few lore bits that had to be cut as well. One of which is that the Dunwich Company was named after its founder, a man named Richard Dunwich. The only family of his that we know of is his sister, Constance Dunwich, who married into the Blackhall family. She became Constance Blackhall, the ancestor of Obadiah Blackhall. So Obadiah, according to the cut content of Point Lookout, had a direct connection to the Dunwich family. Richard then must have had some sort of obsession with ug-qualtoth and the occult, which is why he founded a boring company to dig deep into the earth to uncover artifacts like the obelisk we find under his building. But his sister, Constance, must have also shared the same love of the occult. After Richard uncovered the obelisk beneath his building, he gave the Krivbekna to his sister. His sister then brought it to her home at Point Lookout, where it kept her alive until the book was stolen. We don't know who stole it, but it was after this theft that it eventually fell into the hands of Jamie's father. Here's what I propose. Upon feeling the power of ug-qualtoth growing in the basement of the Dunwich building, Obadiah Blackhall, the lone ancestor of Constance Blackhall, made his way to the Dunwich building. Perhaps he was a young man at this point. After all, Jamie and his father arrived at Dunwich over 130 years ago. As a young man, Obadiah ventures through the building until he finds the Krivbekna and takes it away before Jamie can notice. He brings it back to Point Lookout, where like his ancestor Constance before him, the book artificially extends his lifespan. He then proceeds to do all of the occult things he wanted to do, like sacrifice swamp people in his basement, until one of the swamp folk escape with the Krivbekna. Without the book, his health begins to decline, and he finds himself to be wheelchair bound. And it is then when Obadiah meets the Lone Wanderer. Now, this is just my theory, piecing together all of the evidence we found, and some of that evidence does depend upon cut content, and cut content is not canon. So I can't say that what I just explained is canon lore, but it's the best explanation that I can have for the evidence we find. But what are the consequences of the destruction of the Krivbekna? Has ug-qualtoth's power been greatly diminished, or was this just a superficial flesh wound? For as we know, 10 years later in the capital wasteland, we find ug-qualtoth, or powers like him, still exerting their strong influence on humans and ghouls. At Hugo's Hole, yes, but also at Cabot House. I think that whatever grand intelligence was communicating with Lorenzo Cabot, giving him orders, giving him an air of superiority, and even supernatural powers of telekinesis and an increased lifespan, is likely the same or a similar power that spoke to Hugo, spoke to Jamie's father, and spoke to Jamie. But what are your thoughts on the Dunwich building, the Krivbekna, and ug-qualtoth? Do you think we've seen the end of the occult in the Fallout series? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I publish a new Fallout video 6 days a week on a wide range of topics spanning all of the games. We've got one more episode in this Point Lookout series to go. We'll wrap everything up with a big video on the loot and the perks that we can walk away with after completing the Point Lookout DLC. I'll publish that video tomorrow morning. If you want to make sure you don't miss it, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. You can follow me on Twitter and Facebook to keep up to date with all Oxhorn news. And if you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early, with a brand new video.